Hey, soldiers, marijuana. It's becoming legal in more and more states. The federal government is starting to relax its stance on cannabis. But from an investment standpoint, should you get involved in this? Is the grass really greener on the other side of the black market for marijuana? Is it really? Can you make money? Or is this just going to be a boondoggle that will ultimately just benefit the end user, but really have no financial benefit for investors and owners? Hey, let's explore. First of all, you know good and doggone well that the federal government is not going to allow cannabis to be sold in this country or used without taxes being attached to it, right? Absolutely. So that's one of the things that is slowing the approach of the federal response to this. Mind you, the federal government has a whole bunch of agencies that'll need to weigh in on this. Agencies you might not even be aware of that would have some say in this process. Treasury Department, from the standpoint of taxation, okay, obviously. You've got the Justice Department, got to look at the laws surrounding penalties for continuing to sell black market marijuana. Then you've got the Congress. They've got to decide on whether or not there's going to be a bill, how that bill is going to look. Can they get it through the House? Can they get it through the Senate? So that is why this is such a lengthy process. You've also got the banking aspect of it. Let's just take a quick look here at some of the different aspects of this. And if we look at it from the federal level, now let's talk about state in a minute. But you've got the Drug Enforcement Administration. Okay, obviously they're out there. They're going to want to understand, how to approach this, because even though you may be running a legal business, still the Drug Enforcement Administration is going to be in on it because it is still a drug. Okay, aspirin, the Drug Enforcement Administration has some rules regarding that, so they're going to have rules regarding enforcement of marijuana. Treasury Department's Financial Crimes Enforcement Network, they released new marijuana banking data, including state-by-state numbers for the first time. So they're looking at this. They're probably also saying, okay, as we see this, how much can we get from this if we levy a tax on it? Congressional negotiations on the so-called Safe Plus package of marijuana banking and expungement reforms are intensifying as the clock ticks down on the lame duck session, but some advocates aren't ready to sign off until they see actual provisions. So Congress is kicking back saying, look, all right, yeah, I think everybody can agree on expunging the records of people who are convicted for marijuana crimes if we're going to legalize it, but we need language. We need to understand how it's going to look. This is how Congress works. The wheels turn very slowly. Now, the demand is certainly there. A new Pew Research study found that only 1 out of every 10 Americans think that marijuana should continue to be totally illegal. So 90% of America feels otherwise. So I think that that represents the way I feel. I've never indulged in marijuana. However, I don't begrudge anyone who does. It's natural, okay? I don't know the harmful effects. I'm certainly not endorsing it, but I don't have a problem with, people deciding to use it. Now, these people need to understand, and I think most reasonable people would, whether you indulge in marijuana use or not, damn well that you're not going to be allowed to pilot a 747 under the influence of marijuana.
Whatever, homie.
Good and doggone well that you're not going to be allowed to drive a school bus or even open someone's chest cavity up and do open heart surgery on them if you're under the influence of marijuana. So it's more of a decriminalization of it, but there's still going to be rules around it. There will have to be. But we're a long way from reefer madness. This was a movie that came out, I believe, back in the 1950s and tried to scare the hell out of everybody with regard to demon weed. That's what they called it.
Smoking the soul-destroying reefer, they find a moment's pleasure, but at a terrible price. Debauchery, violence, murder, and the ultimate end of the marijuana addict. Hopeless insanity.
Now, let's go on. The federal government's U.S. Department of Agriculture, they're starting to ask questions about hemp cultivation in the census of the agriculture for the first time. We've got Representative Barbara Lee. She's from California. She's a Democrat. She tweeted, pardoning federal marijuana convictions is a great first step. Now we must legalize marijuana at the federal level. Representative Dave Joyce, he's a Republican from Ohio. I was honored to kick off the inaugural National Indigenous Cannabis Policy and Advocacy Summit last week. Okay, so you got more and more bipartisan support for this. And then if you look at the individual states, Michigan Governor Gretchen Whitmer announced a new process for social equity program participants whose pre-qualification status has expired to reapply without having to pay additional application fees. Washington State's treasurer touted a newspaper editorial on the need to pass marijuana banking regulation. And that's important because right now, without that federal assent, banks, federally chartered banks, are not allowed to do business with the marijuana businesses. So it might be legal in a state, but trying to put your money in a federally chartered bank is a no-go right now. So Washington State's working on that. South Dakota, activists plan to put marijuana legalization on the ballot again in 2024. Kentucky, state president discussed his skepticism about medical cannabis. He's behind the times. He's the 1 in 10, representative of the 1 in 10. Maryland, where I live, actually, we just had a ballot initiative that went through, part of which said that people can actually grow marijuana up to 2 plants. I don't know what that translates into in terms of an amount of smokable marijuana, but hey, up to 2 plants you can start to plant in Maryland. Now, listen, I just glossed over that. I haven't read the ins and outs of that. Do not plant marijuana if you are in Maryland without first doing your due diligence. Okay, because I'm sure that the rule is more expansive. I'm sure it's just more than one sentence that says you can plant 2 marijuana plants. Okay, I study it for yourself. My dog Gizmo definitely agrees. I don't want to see you locked up. I don't think you can watch this channel in prison, and that would be a tragedy. All right, because we need the views. We're a small channel. Okay, so we appreciate your views and we ask you to subscribe. All right, so on a serious note, let's take a look at the actual what is going on from the standpoint of investment in this business. Now, we only have one other country that we can take a look at, and that's Canada. Canada actually recently celebrated its 4-year anniversary of legalized marijuana. How's it working out for them? Well, it's pitiful. That's what some people are saying. And it's a reminder of that the U.S. should not just look at this as some panacea and it's going to work like so smoothly. Earlier this month, President Biden said he's going to pardon the federal cannabis offenders in order a review of how the drug is classified. That move alone is unlikely to lead to the end of federal marijuana prohibitions, but might set the country on the road to further reforms that could benefit U.S. pot growers who operate in a weird legal limbo, like I was talking to you about, the banking aspect of it. Today, these marijuana businesses are not allowed to make deductions for normal business expenses on federal effective tax rates. That can make their effective tax rate as high as 70%. Okay? Whew. Almost not worth doing business until this gets straightened out, right? They're also largely barred from accessing many financial services, something that a bill called the Safe Banking Act proposes to fix. Canada is still one of the only developed countries that the U.S. politicians can look to for guidance on how to go fully legal. Official data shows that 4 years after opening up on October 17, 2018, 1/3 of Canada's cannabis growers, 1/3 of Canada's cannabis sales are in the black market. So there's still illegal sales going on. A healthy part of that, in fact, 33%. A market share held by the black market is going to decrease over time, because if they get the taxation piece right, most people are going to make the estimation that, look, I'm not trying to get hauled off to a jail cell overnight. Shit, I got to go to work in the morning. How am I going to explain this to the boss? So I'm going to go ahead and pay the tax and just keep it all legal. That's what most people are going to do when this thing, fleshes out fully. In Ontario, cannabis costs just 2% more than what is available in the illegal market, according to a report. It's clear that legal cannabis can compete with illegal sellers if stores are convenient, prices are competitive, and the products are good quality, says Michael Armstrong, professor of operations research at Brock University in St. Catherine, Ontario. Investors, listen up, have been raised, though. Some enthusiasm about the cannabis industry peaked in 2019. Around $35 billion has been wiped from the market value of 7 major Canadian cannabis companies listed on the New York Stock Exchange. An 85% drop in value. Individual investors who used to prop up share prices are mostly gone. The grass is not greener. And when I say grass, I'm talking about that dollar bill. It's not looking, or it hasn't thus far, looked like it's a good investment. Maybe this will change. I don't know. But their federal government, Canada's federal government, says they're okay with it, and we're still we're going into a lack of investment. Weekly net purchases of a basket of Canadian cannabis stocks by retail traders total around $2.3 million today, compared with a peak of $429 million in February 2021, according to VanderTrack data. The original pitch was that these marijuana companies, with their access to deep pools of investor cash, were going to dominate the global cannabis market as countries went legal one after another. Quote, the dream didn't work out, unquote, says Andrew Carter, cannabis analyst at Stifel Financial. Everybody got funding and they burned it all. Corporate casualties include brewer Constellation Brands and tobacco giant Altria. So the big boys can't even make this thing work. They both rushed to buy stakes in Canadian pot stocks, only to lose billions of dollars on their investments. The lesson for investors is that competition will likely intensify if and when cannabis goes legal in the U.S. In a free market, there may be no limit to the number of licenses handed out. In Canada, more than 700 facilities can grow cannabis for a relatively small 4.3 billion Canadian dollars, the equivalent of about $3.1 billion US dollars of annual adult use retail sales. As more entrepreneurs pile in, big listed Canadian stocks are losing market share. Advertising restrictions and planned packaging rules make it hard to build brands that customers are loyal to, as most products look the same. So my grandfather, he used to smoke these cigarettes called Pall Mall. They were in a red pack. And they were distinct from Newport, which was a cigarette my uncle smoked. And they were distinct from the packaging of Cool, which was a cigarette my other uncle smoked. So they're saying that the government, cutting its nose off to spite its face, because Canada's taxing all of this, has like this generic thing going on. I guess because they don't want to promote it, but you're getting money from it, tax money from it. This is where governments act in a duplicitous fashion. They want to tax the hell out of cigarettes in this country, but at the same time, they want to appear morally upright and put a little warning label on the side. If cigarettes are that dangerous and you, government, really believe that it's killing people, why are you allowing sales of it in the first place? But government will do anything if it means there's some tax revenue involved. Some U.S. cannabis growers have reason to worry that full legalization would allow exports over state lines, which is currently forbidden even in the more than 35 states that have at least partially legalized marijuana. Amply supplied markets like Colorado and Oregon could flood other states with products and drive down prices. States that went legal early, like California, are already experiencing the same pricing trend as Canada. For the 3 months through September, prices of cannabis in California fell 23% compared with the same period last year, data from Headset shows. U.S. companies also need Washington to avoid making the same mistakes as Ottawa. In Canada, federal excise taxes for cannabis are set at a minimum of $1 Canadian a gram. That seemed reasonable to authorities, who assumed prices would stay at around $10 Canadian a gram. However, competition cut prices in half, doubling their tax burden. A levy based on a percentage of retail sales would help American growers to avoid this scenario, although tax revenues would be volatile. So the United States might be looking at this and saying it's not even a good predictable source of ongoing revenue as we move further into the, high debt that the United States has. No major Canadian player is generating positive cash flow yet. It's been 4 years. Okay. So is this a business that you think might be viable going into, especially as a small fry? The big boys weren't able to do it. That doesn't necessarily mean that smaller fries won't be able to. Maybe there is a model of this business that has yet to be discovered. I tell you another thing. Marijuana does have a perception issue. If you ever watched the show Mad Men, Mad Men made drinking look cool. There are a lot of shows that made smoking tobacco look cool, that made consuming alcohol look cool. America and our advertising prowess got that down pat early on. So much so that the federal government at one point actually came in and said, you can't advertise alcohol, for example, in certain ways. Hollywood came in and said, we're not going to allow, people to smoke as much in movies as we used to. And they even have warning labels. This film includes smoking. Like, somebody's going to have a panic attack. But it's 2022. People might do that. So the perception, though, with marijuana, hey, it's Cheech and Chong. It's, Snoop Dogg. It's Willie Nelson. And while these people have their own brand of cool, it's confined to them. If I come on here tomorrow acting like Cheech and Chong, I don't think you would continue to tune in. So the perception issue also is going to be something that hampers the marketing of this particular item. Another positive, though, is that expectations for U.S. cannabis stocks are already low. Cultivators that have facilities in multiple states have an average valuation, including debt equivalent to 7.8 times projected earnings before interest, taxes, depreciation, and amortization. EBITDA is what that is popularly known as. When Canada went legal in 2018, its listed growers fetched an overhyped 27 times. Okay, so there's a little too much enthusiasm there, and it's falling back down to earth. 4 years into Canada's legal cannabis experiment, there's one clear winner. Smokers can enjoy a legal high today at half what it cost them back in 2018. For U.S. cannabis investors, an end to America's federal ban would solve some headaches, but it would unleash plenty of new ones. If America does this, then of course it may hurt Canada. in many ways, because there'll be more alternatives out there. All right, so do with that what you see fit. If you were thinking about getting into that business, there's some challenges ahead. But if you were thinking about just smoking it, then it looks like you're in luck. All right, so speaking of investing, I want you to, I'm pumping this video because I want you to understand that all that glitters is not gold. ESG investing, what is it? Is it just a feel-good way to lose money? Or is there some viability there? Watch this video. I want you to understand what ESG investing is, and I want you to understand, that, again, all that glitters ain't gold. So take a look at it. Don't get wrapped up in the hype and enthusiasm surrounding this, and understand how the federal government has just made a major change that could see you losing money if you follow their lead. All right, guys, I'll talk to you soon.